She held her wounded dog on the dusty street under the burning sun, fingers still clutching a broken comb. No money, no home, just a belief that beauty could save a soul. Each haircut was a battle not for fame, but for survival. Subscribe now so you won't miss the next emotional cinematic stories we bring to life. Before I became a symbol, I was just a mother holding her child beneath torn plastic in the rain of Accra. The screen fades in from black. A single droplet of water falls in slow motion, splashes into a puddle and ripples outward, rings expanding endlessly. The sound of relentless rain begins to fill the theater. Heavy pounding insistent, wide aerial shot. A sprawling, chaotic tapestry of tarpaulin and scrap metal stretches across a forgotten edge of Accra, a shantytown without a name. The camera sweeps lower, gliding through a labyrinth of sagging tents and skeletal shacks. Rain pours in sheets. Plastic flaps whip against rusted poles. Puddles turn to rivers. A child darts barefoot between crates, clutching a torn plastic bag for shelter. A dog shivers beneath an upturned basin ribs, protruding like the rungs of a broken ladder. Title fades in the shack and the comb. The story of Serwaa. The frame holds a dilapidated tent patched with mismatched cloth. Bright kente frayed at the edges, strips of an old UNICEF tarp, faded Coca-Cola banners. A dim interior lit only by a beam of cold daylight filtering through a rip in the canvas. A small battered mirror shard, no larger than a hand, is wedged between two bricks. A cracked plastic comb lies reverently next to it on a folded piece of cloth. Beside them, a small metal bowl filled with rainwater. The camera lingers on the comb, half its teeth broken, one side melted as if burned. A talisman of resilience, a relic of battles long fought. A voice rich, worn defiant, rises. I cannot wait for a miracle. I choose to make one. Cut to Serwaa. She kneels before the mirror. A slender woman with skin weathered by sun and sorrow-braided hair, pulled back in a tight knot. Her eyes sharp, burning with intent. Lines etch her cheeks not from age, but from living too fiercely. Her hands strong, scarred knuckles swollen from cold and labor. They grip the comb with reverence, as one might hold a sacred object. Before her, seated on a low stool, is a small girl no older than 8, her filthy dress clinging to damp skin. She stares into the mirror's shard eyes, wide with tentative hope. Serwaa tilts the girl's head gently with one hand. With the other, she lifts the comb and begins deliberate, tender, precise. Sound cuts down. The world narrows to the rhythm of comb through knotted hair. The camera closes in on the dance of her fingers, an orchestra of resilience. Rain lashes against the canvas, muffled now, a distant storm, compared to the one this woman has weathered. Another voice, her inner voice, clear and resolute, overlays the scene. You do not need a palace to give beauty. You do not need riches to offer dignity. Cut to her daughter. Amma, 7 years old, peeks from behind a stack of crates. She watches her mother with fierce pride. Clutched in Amma's hands, a makeshift kettle made from a repurposed oil can, steam rising from its spout, preparing tea for the morning clients. A sudden gust of wind tears through the entrance flap. Serwaa pauses, shielding the girl's head with her body. Rain pelts in, soaking her back. She turns, teeth gritted, and secures the flap with a length of frayed rope muscle memory. Returning, she brushes water from the girl's brow, offering a rare smile. We finish what we start. She resumes now with renewed urgency, the comb moving in deft, practiced arcs. Flash cut, a memory surges. A man's laughter, warm, distant. A family salon long lost to flames. A once pristine set of combs glistening in neat rows. Then smoke, sirens. A woman screaming, gone. Back to present. Serwaa exhales, steadying her hands. I carry you, Kofi, she whispers under her breath. The camera pans. Beneath the girl's stool lies a mangy but loyal dog, Kofi, head on paws, watching the ritual with patient eyes. His side bears a faded scar, a testament to past violence, a reflection of his owner's own invisible wounds. Suddenly voices rise outside, off camera. She's at it again, look at her, cutting hair like she's royalty. Another voice, bitter, She thinks a broken comb makes her a queen. The girl stiffens. Serwaa's hands pause only briefly, long enough to shield the child's heart. Eyes here, little one. Not all noise is worth hearing. She resumes, voice low but sure. Outside, a pair of shadowy figures loiter, smirking. The camera catches their reflection in the mirror shard, a distorted echo of their mockery. But Serwaa's focus remains unbroken. Cut to close-up. The comb glides once more, slow, patient healing. A tangled knot gives way beneath her touch. The girl's shoulders ease. Her eyes meet Serwaa's in the glass trust beginning to blossom. Voiceover. In this place where walls bleed and floors drown, we make space for dignity. Hair by hair, breath by breath. Serwaa leans back, assessing her work. A battered pair of scissors emerges from a cloth wrap. Snip, snip. Each cut precise, a reclaiming of the child's worth. Outside, the rain lessens. Sunlight strains through ruptures in the clouds, a single beam piercing the gloom. It strikes the mirror shard, fractured light cascading across the girl's face. Serwaa smiles a moment rare and profound. See, even broken things can shine. The girl smiles back her first. A slow pullback shot, Serwaa gathers the loose strands, brushes them gently from the girl's shoulders. She reaches for a small vial of fragrant oil, the last remnants of an old stock gifted long ago. 2 drops in her palm. She warms them, breathes in their memory. Then, with exquisite tenderness, she smooths them through the child's hair. Outside, the voices fade. A hush falls over the shack. For this moment, here beauty reigns. The girl rises. Serwaa offers a small cracked mirror. The child gasps, a mix of disbelief and joy. She hugs Serwaa fiercely, whispering words lost beneath the rising score. Kofi barks once short and triumphant. Amma brings over a chipped mug of tea, her eyes shining. The girl accepts it with trembling hands. Serwaa watches her sip, then gathers her tools, the comb, the mirror shard, the scissors. She wraps them carefully in a faded cloth, as one might wrap relics of a sacred craft. Voiceover soft, resolute. I cannot wait for a miracle. I choose to make one. Final shot of the sequence. Close-up on Serwaa's hands, scarred but steady, tying the cloth shut. A lingering frame on the comb as it disappears from view. The camera tilts upward, her eyes meet the lens. No words. Only a gaze that dares the world to witness her fight. The rain subsides by morning. The tent breathes damp air. Canvas walls sag with collected weight. Inside, Serwaa awakens before the light dares to filter in. She lies still for a moment, listening, always listening. Beyond the thin fabric barrier, life in the shantytown stirs with hunger and desperation. Amma curls against her mother's side, small limbs tangled in a worn blanket. Next to them, Kofi dozes, belly rising and falling steadily, one ear twitching at distant sounds. Serwaa's gaze falls on him, this scarred creature, who had no place just as they had none. Careful not to wake the child, she shifts her weight, feet finding the cold earth. The tent's central pole groans beneath the damp strain as she moves. With practiced motions, she retrieves the cloth bundle from beneath her pillow. The comb, the shard of mirror, the scissors. She unwraps them slowly, laying each with reverence on a makeshift table, 2 stacked crates draped in faded kente. A ritual of defiance against the erosion of dignity. In the far corner, a battered enamel kettle waits atop a tiny charcoal stove. She lights it swiftly, the first hiss of flames, like a heartbeat quickening. Amma stirs, eyes blinking open. Morning, Ma. Morning, my Amma, Serwaa replies, a softness reserved only for her daughter. Kofi rises, stretches with a low groan. He pads over, nuzzling against Serwaa's knee. You watch over her today? Serwaa murmurs, scratching behind his ear. His tail thumps once in response. As the kettle begins to steam, Serwaa turns to her daughter. We have work, little one, souls to mend. The tent flaps open. Sunlight claws through the cracks in the clouds, casting fragmented beams onto the muddy clearing. Already a small line forms faces marked by weariness, hope flickering beneath grime and grief. Men with hollow eyes. Women clutching thin children. Old souls bent beneath invisible weight. Serwaa steps out, shoulders squared. Amma follows with careful steps, cradling the kettle steam, trailing like a fragile ghost. Kofi takes his place at the entrance stance, alert yet calm. his presence a quiet warning. No one pushes past him. The Sunday ritual begins. Serwaa gestures to the first in line, a gaunt man whose hair hangs in sodden ropes. "Sit, brother." He lowers himself to the stool before her. Serwaa wraps a threadbare cloth around his shoulders. With hands both firm and gentle, she lifts the comb, her totem, and begins. The blade of the morning light catches the comb's fractured edge, gleaming like tempered steel. She works in silence, each stroke deliberate. Amma moves between the waiting souls, offering chipped cups of tea, her voice shy but bright. Kofi's eyes scan the crowd, ever watchful. As hours unfold, the scene becomes almost sacred. Hair falls in soft cascades. Faces emerge from beneath neglect, bones of identity reassembled through her touch. Some weep, some smile for the first time in months. All leave changed. Between clients, Serwaa pauses only to wipe her brow, fingers lingering over the comb's worn teeth. Her gaze drifts, caught in memory. Flashback. Sun-drenched room, a real salon. Walls painted bright gold. Mirrors line the space, pristine and whole. Comb-set scissors gleaming on polished counters. Laughter rings out. Serwaa, younger, radiant, styling a woman's hair as a man watches nearby, her husband Kweku. He claps playfully, pride in his eyes. "One day you'll be the best in all of Accra." She smiles back, the comb in her hand, this very comb, new and whole. Sudden darkness, sirens, screams, a crash of metal, the salon ablaze. In the wreckage, soot-stained and shaking, she finds the comb, half-melted edges jagged. Everything else is gone. Back to present. A breath shudders from her. She strokes the comb's surface, grounding herself. "Still here. We're still here." The line dwindles. Afternoon shadows creep. Amma curls beside Kofi, both weary but content. The dog lifts his head, nuzzling the girl's cheek. She giggles, wrapping arms around his neck. "Best boy," she whispers. Serwaa watches them, her two constants, in a world stripped bare. When the last client departs, Serwaa kneels beside them. Amma rests her head against her mother's shoulder. Kofi settles at their feet, eyes closing. "Tell me again, Ma," Amma murmurs. "About Baba, about before." Serwaa hesitates. Her gaze drifts beyond the tent walls to where the city thrums, indifferent to their survival. But in her daughter's eyes, a need, a tether to what was lost. Flashback, Kweku's voice warm against her ear. "We'll build a home so bright no shadow can touch it." Then the accident, twisted metal, rain-slick road. A single call that shattered her world. Homeless overnight, family gone, relatives turned cold. You bring misfortune, leave. The streets, the fear, the hunger, and then Kofi. A bag of bones in a trash heap, barely breathing. Something in his eyes, a refusal to die. So she carried him home. Their first home, a cardboard shelter beneath a bridge. They survived together. Back to present. "Your Baba was kind," she says softly. "He gave the world beauty. We carry that gift now." She unwraps the cloth bundle, letting Amma trace the comb's jagged edge. "This is what's left, and it is enough." Amma nods, solemn. Kofi thumps his tail. Outside, evening falls. A lone bird sings a fragile hymn against the dusk. Serwaa gathers her tools. "Tomorrow we begin again," she says. Amma presses close. Kofi rises, body lean, but strong, standing sentinel. Together they face the fading light, a mother, a child, a dog, and a comb that defied the ashes. It began as any other Sunday. The sky stretched cloudless above the shantytown's patchwork sprawl, the air heavy with the promise of heat. By sunrise, Serwaa had already prepared her modest station, the cloth-wrapped comb, the mirror shard, the battered scissors, all arranged with ritual care atop her crate table. Amma stood by, kettle in hand, steam swirling upward like fragile silk. At the entrance, Kofi maintained his solemn vigil, brown eyes scanning the small gathering that had begun to form. The first soul took her seat, a woman's skin taut across bone eyes, flickering with weary hope. "Sit easy," Serwaa whispered. "We begin." Her fingers moved with familiar rhythm, untangling hair matted by days beneath the unrelenting sun. The comb's fractured teeth glided through with reverence. In these moments, Serwaa disappeared into her craft, each stroke a quiet rebellion against a world that had long since abandoned softness. Across the street, obscured beneath the awning of a faded bookstore, Yaw adjusted the strap of his camera bag. A young blogger, an amateur documentarian, he had wandered here on a whim, drawn by tales of an invisible city thriving beneath Accra's polished veneer. His lens sought truth, not spectacle, but what truth could be found among these forgotten stalls and tents. And then he saw her. Through the rippling heat and shifting crowd, his gaze locked onto the scene within the tent. A woman, a queen within her humble court, transforming the defeated into the dignified with nothing more than a broken comb and unwavering resolve. Without thought, Yaw lifted his camera. The lens focused, framing the woman's scarred hands, the child serving tea beside her, the battered dog lying sentinel at their feet. Click, another angle. Click. He switched to video, breath caught in his throat. The woman moved with such deliberate grace that the act transcended mere grooming. It became a quiet act of salvation. Yaw pressed record. "Who is she?" he whispered to no one. Through the viewfinder, he captured the moment when Serwaa lifted the child's chin, her voice low but fierce. "You do not wear shame in your hair. We carry beauty here, no matter the storm." Yaw's chest tightened. There was a story here, a story the world needed to see. The day wore on. Yaw remained a shadow at the edge, camera rolling as client after client emerged, transformed if not in fortune, then in spirit. When at last Serwaa began to pack her tools, he crossed the clearing. "Ma'am," he called gently. Serwaa turned wary. Yaw approached slowly, hands open. "My name is Yaw Mensah. I watched you today. What you do, it matters. People should know." Serwaa's gaze sharpened. "Know what, that we are poor, that we survive with scraps." Her tone was not cruel, only exhausted. Yaw shook his head. "No, that you bring dignity where none is given. That you heal with your hands." She studied him, a stranger yet sincere. "I do this for them," she said at last, voice soft. "Not for cameras." "I understand," Yaw replied. "But if you allow it, I would like to tell your story, so others might be reminded of what is possible." A long pause. Serwaa glanced at Amma, then at Kofi, who regarded Yaw with cautious interest. Finally she sighed. "One story. Tell it true." "I will," Yaw promised. That night, beneath the dim glow of a borrowed bulb, Yaw crafted his post. He titled it simply, "The Beauty from a Broken Comb." Photos led the piece, intimate, raw. The comb, its jagged teeth gleaming beneath calloused fingers. Amma pouring tea, eyes alight. Kofi resting, the embodiment of silent loyalty. Above all, Serwaa had bowed in concentration, a sculptor of lost hope. In words, woven from reverence and awe, Yaw wrote of what he had witnessed. In the heart of the city's forgotten quarter, a woman with nothing creates everything. Her name is Serwaa. Her tool, a comb broken by fire and fate. Her mission, restoring dignity, one head, one heart at a time. He ended with a single line. "We search for miracles. Sometimes they live beneath torn canvas, comb in hand." Yaw hit publish and leaned back, heart pounding. Morning came, and the storm began. Within hours, the post spread like wildfire across social media. Retweets, shares, comments, thousands, tens of thousands. Ghana awoke to the image of Serwaa, a symbol of resilience woven from ruin. Nguidep Tuluke trended on Twitter. Influencers reposted. News outlets picked up the story. Messages poured in. "Who is this woman? How can we help? She is what this country needs." Back in the tent, unaware, Serwaa moved through her routine. By mid-morning, the first stranger appeared, a young woman, clutching a smartphone, eyes wide. "You are Serwaa." Confused, Serwaa nodded. "I saw you online. I had to come. You are an inspiration." More came. Phones raised. Cameras clicked. "Smile for us." "Can we interview you? Has anyone offered sponsorship yet?" Bewildered, Serwaa retreated inside. Amma closed the flap. The child obeyed, frightened by the sudden onslaught. Kofi growled low, positioning himself before them. Inside, Serwaa paced. "I do not understand. I do this as I always have. Why now do they care?" Amma peered out, voice small. "They call you famous, Ma." "Fame does not feed us," Serwaa replied bitterly. She sank onto the crate, head in hands. "I did not choose this." Later that afternoon, Yaw arrived breathless. "I am sorry," he began. "I never expected—" The response is overwhelming. Serwaa looked up, eyes hard. "And what will they do with it?" "Take pictures and forget us by next week." Yaw hesitated. "Some may, but others, some truly want to help. Donations are coming. Opportunities." "I do not cut for fame or fortune," Serwaa said quietly. "I cut because they have no one else. I do it because it is needed." Yaw met her gaze, voice steady. Then let us use this moment to do more of that, on your terms. A long silence. Finally, Serwaa stood. I will not pose, I will not perform, but I will continue as I always have. If they wish to help, let them come with open hands, not cameras. Yaw nodded, relief evident. I will make sure they understand. That night, alone in the tent, Serwaa unwrapped her tools. She traced the comb's worn surface, eyes gleaming. You and I, we began in ashes. We will not be used by the wind. Outside, distant voices still called her name. But inside, beneath canvas and stars, a single truth anchored her. I do not do this to be seen. I do this because it must be done. The days after Yaw's post blurred into a surreal rhythm. By dawn, the line outside Serwaa's tent doubled, then tripled. Familiar faces mingled with strangers drawn by the tale of the beauty from a broken comb. News crews arrived, cameras heavy and expectant. Curious onlookers hovered, phones raised, eager for a glimpse of the woman who had transformed scraps into hope. But beneath the surface, the ground trembled. The local enforcers, Kwame Shark Mensah and his crew, watched from the periphery. For years they ruled these streets, extracting fees from every stall, every makeshift vendor. Their cut was law. And now from nowhere, this woman, this nobody, had drawn crowds and attention without paying tribute. Worse, she had become the symbol. Symbols were dangerous. Symbols invited scrutiny. She thinks she can run a business here and not pay us, Kwame spat, pacing before his gang. It's charity, one of his men offered weakly. Not a business. A backhand silenced him. Charity makes money too. All these cameras, all this traffic, she profits, and we get nothing. The crew murmured agreement. Tomorrow, Kwame growled. We pay her a visit. Morning came thick with humidity. Serwaa prepared as always, comb unwrapped, kettle steaming, braiding her mother's hair in silence. Kofi watched the entrance, ears twitching at distant shouts. The first clients arrived, tired but smiling. Serwaa moved among them, hands steady despite the storm brewing within her tent. She had felt it, an unease growing with each passing hour. And then they came. Kwame and 3 enforcers swaggered through the clearing, scattering those in line. Cameras lowered. Phones vanished. Fear swept the air. Kofi's growl split the silence. He rose, hackles bristling, body taut with readiness. Kwame sneered. Easy, dog, you're next. Serwaa stepped forward, shoulders squared. This is not a place for you, she said evenly. We serve dignity here. No violence. Kwame laughed. You serve haircuts, and you serve us now. He tossed a crumpled paper onto her table. 100 CDs, every Sunday. Are you close? Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Serwaa's jaw tightened. Her gaze never wavered. I pay no bribes. Do not trade dignity for fear. Kwame's smile faded. Wrong answer, woman. He stepped closer, towering over her. You think these cameras protect you. They'll be gone soon. We remain. Serwaa's voice rang out clear and strong. I do this because it must be done. Not for profit, not for you. Amma clung to her mother's skirt, trembling. Kofi growled, louder, stance rigid. Kwame eyed the dog. Keep that mutt on a leash. Next time we won't be so polite. With a final sneer, the gang withdrew, melting into the shadows. But the message remained, a promise of violence. That night the tent felt colder. Serwaa sat before the mirror, shard fingers tracing the comb's edge. I will not bow, she whispered. Not again. Amma curled against Kofi, eyes wide with questions too heavy for her age. Serwaa pulled her close. We stand as we always have, together. But in her heart, doubt coiled, a serpent waiting to strike. Sunday returned, humid and restless. Word had spread. The crowd was larger than ever. Yet an undercurrent of tension rippled beneath every smile. Serwaa prepared anyway, her tools laid out. Kofi stationed by the entrance, more vigilant than before. Yaw arrived, concern etched in his features. I heard about Kwame, he said quietly. I can call someone. Bring help. Serwaa shook her head. This is my fight. I will not turn it into a spectacle. But no. Her voice was steel. We continue as we must. The day unfolded in strained silence. Each cut, each stroke of the comb, a quiet act of defiance. Amma served tea with trembling hands. Kofi remained alert, eyes never leaving the clearing beyond. And then they struck. Late afternoon. The line had thinned. Fatigue tugged at Serwaa's limbs. From nowhere, a cry from Amma. Serwaa turned in time to see two of Kwame's men rushing the tent. Kofi launched forward, teeth bared. Chaos erupted. A pipe swung metal against fur and bone. Kofi yelped a sound that tore through the air. He crumpled, body convulsing. "No!" Serwaa screamed, lunging forward. Amma sobbed, frozen in terror. The men retreated as quickly as they came, laughter trailing behind them. Rain began sudden and violent. Serwaa crawled to Kofi's hands, trembling. "Stay with me," she whispered, voice breaking. Blood mixed with mud beneath her knees. Slow motion rain pelting her face, her arms wrapping around Kofi's broken body, her scream lost beneath the storm. "Stay with me," again and again, a mantra against the inevitable. Tears merged with rainwater, carving rivers down her face. Cameras rolled in silence, their operators too stunned to intervene. Amma knelt beside them, sobbing. "Ma, please, is he?" Serwaa pulled her daughter close with one arm, cradling Kofi with the other. The world blurred, time fractured. "We do not break," she choked out. "We do not break." The rain slowed. The clearing emptied. Yaw approached, eyes glistening. "We must get him help," he urged. "I know a vet nearby." Serwaa looked up, hope flickering amid devastation. "Go," she whispered. "Tell them. I will not lose him." Night had fallen hard upon the tent. The rain had passed, leaving behind the scent of damp earth and iron. Inside, Serwaa knelt beside Kofi's limp body, fingers trembling as they stroked his blood-matted fur. Amma sat nearby, arms wrapped around her knees, watching with hollow eyes. The little girl's body shook from exhaustion and fear, but her voice came clear. Small, defiant. "Mama, don't give up. I will help you." Serwaa lifted her gaze, vision blurred by tears. For a moment, all the iron resolve she had built over years seemed to falter. "Amma." But her daughter shook her head, face streaked with dirt and rain. "You always say we are strong. Kofi needs us to be strong now." The words struck deep, carving a space in Serwaa's grief. She swallowed hard, brushing tears from her cheeks. "Yes, my child," she whispered. "You are right. We stand together. We fight together." She leaned over and kissed Amma's forehead, holding her tightly for a breathless moment. Kofi whimpered faintly beneath her palm, a spark of life refusing to die. It was enough. "He is still with us," Serwaa said, her voice sharpening. "We must act." Yaw returned minutes later, breathless, his eyes wide with urgency. "I found someone," he said quickly. "A vet," she saw the post. "She is on her way now." "Bless you," Serwaa murmured, clutching Kofi tighter. Moments stretched into lifetimes. The tent, once a haven of quiet labor, now thrummed with raw tension. Amma's small hand rested on Kofi's paw, her other hand clutching her mother's tightly. Outside, distant voices drifted, neighbors speaking in low tones, news of the attack spreading through the fragile web of the community. And beyond that, a new tide was building. Far across the city, illuminated screens told their story. Photos of Serwaa, cradling Kofi in the rain, had gone viral, images captured by Yaw and a few brave witnesses. "Protect her," read one caption. "She has stood for us. Now we stand for her." Donations flooded in, money supplies, messages of solidarity. But Serwaa remained unaware, her world narrowed to the fragile life between her arms. Then a voice at the entrance. "May I come in?" A slender woman stepped through the flap, a battered medical kit slung over her shoulder. Her hair was tied in a hasty bun, eyes shadowed with fatigue, yet burning with purpose. "Dr. Afua Mensima," she said softly. "I'm here to help." Serwaa rose, instantly motioning to Kofi. "Please, he is everything to us." Afua knelt beside the dog, hands swift and gentle. She examined him with practiced precision, her brow furrowed. "Fractured ribs, internal bleeding. We must stabilize him now." "Do what you must," Serwaa whispered. "Save him." Amma clutched her mother's waist, watching in silent terror. Dr. Afua worked with relentless focus, pulling supplies from her kit, gauze, syringes, a portable IV. "Hold him steady," she instructed. Serwaa complied, murmuring soothing words to Kofi, even as her heart screamed. Kofi's eyes fluttered open, clouded but alive. "Good boy," Serwaa breathed. "Stay with us. Stay." Afua administered the injection with swift precision. "This will ease the pain," she explained. "But he needs rest and care. I will return tomorrow with more supplies." Serwaa's tears flowed freely now, not of despair, but fragile hope. "Thank you," she choked. "How did you know to come?" Efua smiled faintly. "The world knows. You have touched many hearts." She glanced around the sparse tent. "You will need help. Supplies. Support. And I will help arrange it." Serwaa's voice caught. "I did not ask for this. I only wanted to serve." "And because of that," Efua replied, "you inspire." After the vet left, Serwaa sat beside Kofi, her hands never leaving his fur. Amma curled into her mother's lap, head resting against her chest. "Mama," she whispered sleepily, "will Kofi be okay?" Serwaa kissed her hair. "Yes, my brave one. He will fight as we fight." Amma's breath slowed her small body, finally surrendering to exhaustion. Serwaa remained awake, a lone sentinel through the night. Outside, unnoticed by her weary eyes, the world kept turning. By morning, the first packages arrived. A neighbor, a stooped old man, appeared at the tent's entrance, arms laden with bags. "From the people," he said simply. "For you." Bewildered Serwaa helped him lay the items down. Blankets, canned food, bottled water, medical supplies, a new kettle. Others followed, women, men, children, each bringing something, however small. One young boy handed over a pristine, unused comb. "For your work," he said shyly. Serwaa knelt, taking it gently. "Thank you, child. But this—" She gestured to her own battered comb, now cleaned and wrapped once more. "This is what I use. It reminds me why I began." The boy smiled, understanding beyond his years. "Then keep this as well, for when you need it," Yaw returned later, phone in hand. "You need to see this," he urged. Reluctantly, Serwaa stood and peered at the screen. Thousands of messages, words of love, offers of aid. The photo of her in the rain clutching Kofi had become an emblem. "You are a symbol now," Yaw said softly. "And symbols change things." But Serwaa shook her head. "I did not seek to be a symbol. I sought only to serve with what I had." Yaw smiled. "And because of that, you are more than a symbol. You are hope." Late that day, as the sun dipped low, Dr. Efua returned. Kofi stirred at her voice tail, thumping weakly against the floor. "Good boy," she murmured, checking his vitals. "He is strong. He will recover." Serwaa exhaled a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "We owe you so much," she whispered. "You owe only yourself," Efua replied. "Your courage has moved many. Let them now move for you." That evening, mother and daughter sat side by side, arms around Kofi's resting form. Outside, the tent glowed softly from lanterns gifted by neighbors. A small sign had been propped at the entrance by some unknown hand. "Beauty lives here." Serwaa traced the words with her eyes. "Come, Amma," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Let us give thanks for each other, for this fight, for those who stand with us." Amma pressed close, voice soft but fierce. "And for Kofi, Mama, for Kofi." Serwaa smiled through tears. "Yes, my child, for Kofi." Morning came soft, the sun filtering through a quilt of low clouds. Inside the tent, Serwaa awoke to the rhythm of Kofi's slow, even breathing, a sound that wrapped her in fragile relief. Amma lay curled beside her mother, arms draped protectively around the dog's torso. It had been 3 days since the attack, 3 days since the outpouring began. The tent had transformed, still humble, but now filled with signs of community support, folded blankets, fresh food, new clothes. Yet the greatest gift of all was this moment, the small pulse of life beneath her hand, proof that some battles could be won. Yaw arrived early, his face alight with unspoken news. "There is someone you must meet," he said. "It could change everything." Serwaa eyed him warily. "I have changed enough already." Yaw knelt beside her. "Please, one meeting, no promises, but hear them." After a beat, she nodded. "Bring them." An hour later, a black SUV rolled up to the outskirts of the encampment. It drew stares, a sleek beast amidst the shantytown's skeletal frames. From it emerged a woman of striking presence, Esi Dankwa, regional director for Adinkra Beauty, one of Ghana's most prestigious cosmetics brands. Her tailored suit seemed almost too sharp for the dust beneath her heels. Yet she walked with purpose through the maze of tents until she reached Serwaa's modest home. "Madam Serwaa?" she greeted with a warm smile. "I hope you will forgive the intrusion." Serwaa rose slowly, shoulders square. "You are welcome if you come with respect," she said evenly. "I come with admiration," Essie replied, "and an offer." Inside, they sat amidst crates and lanterns. Amma hovered at her mother's side, gaze flickering between the stranger and Kofi, who watched silently from his mat. Y'all remained nearby, an anchor of familiar presence. You have inspired a nation, AC began. Your story has shown that beauty is not found in glass and chrome, but in heart and courage. She leaned forward. At Adinkra Beauty, we believe in such stories. We wish to help you bring your gift to more people through partnership. Serwaa frowned. I do not understand. Essie smiled. We would sponsor the opening of a salon, your own. A clean, beautiful space where your work can continue elevated and supported. She gestured to a sleek folder in her lap. We will provide equipment supplies staff if you wish. You will be compensated, and the world will see not only your story, but the ongoing good it brings. For a moment, hope flickered in Serwaa's chest, a dream long buried beneath grief and survival. But then her eyes hardened. And what of this place? She asked softly. Of those here who cannot step into bright salons or afford such beauty. As he hesitated, naturally the salon would be in a more suitable location, cleaner, more secure. This tent, it cannot sustain your work at the scale it deserves. So I must leave it? Serwaa pressed. Yes, Essie said gently. It is a new beginning. Serwaa's heart twisted. And what of those who still wait beneath these tarps and rags, who trust these hands because they know them here beneath this canvas? Essie's gaze softened. You have done so much here. But imagine what you could do with greater reach. More clients, more awareness, more power to help. Serwaa looked away. The walls of the tent seemed to close in. The comb resting atop its folded cloth caught her eye, a symbol of what had been built not in comfort, but in defiance. I will consider, she said at last, but I promise nothing. Of course, Essie replied, standing. I will return tomorrow. You have time to decide. She left with quiet grace, the hum of the SUV fading into distance. That night, beneath the soft glow of their single lantern, Serwaa sat in silence, the offer heavy in her mind. Amma knelt beside Kofi, brushing his fur with gentle fingers. After a while, the child spoke. Mama, will we leave? Serwaa sighed. I do not know yet, my child. Amma's eyes filled with unspoken questions. But if we leave, who will cut their hair? The words struck deep. I have always cut for those who needed, not those who paid. Serwaa murmured. If I move to a salon, I fear that may change. Amma rested her head against her mother's shoulder. Then take it with us, she whispered. Take the love with us. The hands stay the same no matter where they work. Serwaa's throat tightened. You are wise beyond your years, she said softly. Amma hugged her. I learned from you. As the hours wore on, Serwaa turned the offer over in her mind. She pictured a clean, bright space free of leaking tarps and mud-soaked floors, a place where Amma could be safe, where Kofi could rest in peace. But always her thoughts circled back to those who came with heads bowed, seeking dignity in simple acts. Could she truly leave them behind? Or could she, as her daughter had said, bring the love with her? By dawn, resolve had begun to take shape. As sunlight bled through the tent, she woke Amma with a gentle shake. We have a decision to make, she said. They prepared the tent together, combing, cleaning, serving tea rituals that grounded them. As the first clients arrived, Serwaa worked with renewed clarity, each stroke of the comb a silent vow. If I go, she thought, they will come too, not in body, but in spirit. Later that day, when Isi returned, Serwaa met her with steady eyes. I will accept, she said, but with one condition. Isi raised a brow. I will continue to serve those here free of charge one day each week. The salon will be a bridge, not a barrier. Isi smiled. Agreed. We would expect nothing less. Serwaa nodded. Then we begin. That night, as the tent darkened around them, Serwaa held her daughter close. You were right, she whispered. Amma smiled sleepily. We take the love with us, Mama. Always. And beneath her words, Kofi stirred softly, a loyal heart, ready for the next chapter. The morning broke hard with sun sharp against the canvas walls. Serwaa had slept little, her mind braced for the day ahead, the day they would leave the tent for good. The new salon was ready. Adinkra Beauty had worked swiftly, outfitting the space with gleaming mirrors, plush chairs, shelves lined with oils and creams she had once only dreamed of. But leaving this place, this life forged beneath patched tarps and unbroken will, it would not be simple. Mama, we will take the love with us. Amma had reminded her, again that dawn voice strong, despite the fears shimmering beneath it. Kofi still healing but stronger. Each day sat at the tent's edge, eyes bright alert. He would walk beside them, as always. They began early. Yaw arrived with a borrowed truck, rusted but dependable. A handful of neighbors gathered, faces wary but warm, ready to help. "You should not do this alone," Yaw told her. "Too many eyes watch. Too many hands may try to stop you." Serwaa nodded, jaw set. "We will leave with dignity. We will not be cowed." Amma carried the smaller bundles, folded clothes, the kettle Kofi's worn blanket. Serwaa packed her tools last, the comb wrapped in its cloth, the mirror shard, the battered scissors. She held the bundle a moment longer, whispering words only the comb would hear. "You carried us through fire. Now we step into light, but we do not forget." Then she tucked it carefully into her bag. By noon, the tent stood half empty, its walls stripped of memory and weight. Word had spread. The crowd beyond the clearing had grown supporters, curious onlookers, strangers drawn by the gravity of her story. Among them, unseen but watching, lurked darker eyes. Kwame and his men had not forgotten. Nor had they forgiven. "She leaves without paying," Kwame spat, watching from the shadows. "She leaves like a queen. We will remind her who rules these streets." Late afternoon, the final bundles were lifted onto the truck bed. Yaw's hands trembled slightly on the wheel tension strung through his frame. "We should go soon," he urged, "before the light fades." Serwaa nodded. "One last thing," she said. She stepped into the tent one final time, knelt upon the earth. "For all who came here," she whispered, tears thick in her throat. "For all who sought dignity beneath this cloth, you are not left behind." She rose, squared her shoulders, and stepped into the waiting dusk. They began to move. The truck creaked beneath its load engine, sputtering, as Yaw guided it slowly down the winding lanes of the encampment. Serwaa walked beside it, Amma's hand in hers, Kofi limping faithfully at their side. Neighbors called out blessings. Phones lifted live streams, began the world watched. But not all welcomed the sight. They struck as the last light faded. 3 motorbikes roared from an alleyway, engines screaming. Kwame led the charged, teeth bared, eyes wild. "Stop the truck," he shouted. "She leaves nothing. Not without our word." Kofi growled, hackles rising. Amma screamed, clinging to her mother. Yaw slammed the truck into gear tires, spitting mud. "Go!" Serwaa shouted. "Protect the child." Kwame's men leapt from their bikes, swinging iron pipes. One struck the truck's side, shattering a mirror. Another lunged toward Serwaa, but Kofi launched forward, teeth sinking into the attacker's arm. The man howled, wrenching free, blood streaking his sleeve. "Take the woman!" Kwame bellowed. "She will kneel before us yet." The chase began. Yaw floored the accelerator, the truck lurching down narrow lanes. Serwaa ran alongside as far as she could, Kofi at her heels, Amma clutched in her arms. Kwame pursued on foot, his men flanking him. Phones streamed the chaos, live feeds, capturing every second. Across the city, viewers watched in stunned silence. "Protect Serwaa." The hashtags blazed. "Stop the violence." At the edge of the encampment, Yaw swerved to a stop. "Get in," he shouted. Serwaa hoisted Amma into the cab, then climbed in herself, pulling Kofi up beside her. The truck roared back to life, barreling toward the main road. But Kwame's bikes were fast. They weaved through alleys, engines snarling, drawing closer with every turn. Inside the cab, Amma sobbed quietly, face buried in her mother's shoulder. Serwaa held her close, eyes blazing. "We do not break," she whispered. "We do not break." Yaw's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Hold on," he shouted. Ahead the road narrowed, a dead end loomed. But beyond it, lights. Sirens. "The police," Yaw gasped. "If we reach them." Behind them, a pipe smashed through the rear window. Glass exploded inward. Amma screamed. Kofi barked furiously, shielding her with his body. "No more," Serwaa cried, eyes wild. She grabbed her phone, fingers shaking, and typed a single line. "Help under attack. Location live." The message spread like wildfire. Online thousands watched the chase unfold. "Protect her." "Where are the police?" She saved so many. Now save her. Ahead, red and blue lights flared. A police barricade materialized at the crossroads, officers armed and waiting. Yaw gunned the engine one final time. "We will make it," he vowed. Behind them, Kwame's men hesitated, but Kwame surged forward. "No, they will not escape." The truck burst through the final alley tires, shrieking. Police raised their weapons. "Stop," came the command. Yaw skidded to a halt, engine sputtering. Serwaa threw open the door, shielding Amma with her body. Kofi's snarled teeth bared. Quame's bikes roared into view and stopped dead. Guns trained on them. Officers advanced. "You are done," one officer growled. "Step down, now." Quame cursed, eyes blazing, but saw no choice. Slowly he dismounted, hands raised. Phones streamed every second. The world watched justice catch up to the shadows. In the sudden stillness, Serwaa collapsed to her knees, arms wrapped around Amma and Kofi. Tears streamed down her face, not of fear but release. "We made it," she whispered. "We are whole." Yaw joined them, voice thick. "You are safe now. They will not touch you again." That night, as dawn threatened the horizon, the truck rolled into the new salon. Gleaming glass, polished floors, a place of light and memory. But at its heart, the same woman, the same love. She stepped inside, comb in hand. "We take the love with us," she whispered. And so they did. The day had come. Not in a burst of glory, not beneath banners of triumph, but with quiet determination and the weight of all that had passed. The salon, beauty reborn, stood gleaming beneath the morning sun, a name chosen by Serwaa herself. Not beauty made nor beauty bought, but beauty reborn, because here in this place, beauty rose from ashes. The storefront shimmered with clean glass and polished steel, an incongruous jewel amidst the worn streets of the old market quarter. But inside the air thrummed not with commerce, but with reverence. Serwaa arrived at dawn, flanked by Amma and Kofi. The dog moved slowly, favoring his side, but strong once more, fur groomed and eyes bright. A deep scar ran along his ribcage, a badge of survival. He wore a simple red collar, a gift from one of the countless supporters who had watched their story unfold. "Our lion," Amma whispered, hugging him tight. "Our lion in the salon." Serwaa smiled, tears stinging her eyes. "Yes, my child. He guards us still." Inside the space gleamed. Rows of new chairs, pristine mirrors framed in warm wood sunlight, spilling across tiled floors. But at the heart of it all, on a pedestal of carved mahogany, beneath a glass case, sat the broken comb. Framed in gold, the comb rested upon deep, velvet, jagged teeth, gleaming with quiet defiance. A small plaque beneath it read, "Through fire and storm, dignity endures." As the first guests arrived, Serwaa moved through the space, fingers trailing along each surface, as if grounding herself in this strange new reality. She wore a simple dress of deep blue, her hair wrapped in a vibrant scarf. No jewels, no cosmetics. She would not become something she was not. "We do not forget where we began," she whispered to herself. "We carry it within us." The official opening was modest, but heartfelt. Yaw stood beside her, phone in hand, streaming the event live. "They are watching across the world," he murmured. "Thousands more than we can count." Serwaa exhaled slowly. "Then let them see not a queen, not a star, but a servant." She stepped forward. "Welcome," she spoke, voice carrying through the room and out into the street beyond. "This is beauty reborn, not of riches but of heart, not of ease but of resilience." She gestured to the comb. "This humble tool carried us when nothing else remained. Now it reminds us broken does not mean defeated. Shattered does not mean ended." Applause rose, not raucous but reverent. Eyes shone with tears. Across screens in homes and cafes, phones and offices, hearts stirred. "She speaks for us," the comments poured in. "For all who have known loss and fought to rise again." In a quiet corner of the salon, a small plaque marked a single chair. Sunday chair for those without means. Every Sunday morning, that chair would be reserved unchanged from her days beneath the tent. Here the line would form again, not for charity, but for dignity freely given. And so, as the grand opening concluded and the well-wishers drifted away, Serwaa prepared for the first Sunday chair. She unwrapped her tools, the comb first, always the comb. Though a dozen new combs lay gleaming in drawers, none would replace the one she had carried through so much. "This one knows my hands," she had told Amma. "This one knows my heart." Kofi settled beside the chair, his red collar catching the light. Word had spread Kofi the lion of the salon. A local artist had even painted a small portrait, now hanging in the entryway. Kofi beside the comb, symbols of fight and fidelity. As the first client approached a woman from the old encampment, face lined with hardship, Serwaa knelt before her. Not as owner, not as celebrity, but as servant. "Sit, sister. We begin as always with respect." The woman wept softly as Serwaa combed her hair. Kofi thumped his tail gently beside them, a living symbol of hope reclaimed. Week after week, the ritual held. Each Sunday, the Sunday chair filled with those who had walked the rough roads of life, the forgotten, the battered, the brave. And always Serwaa served with the same hands, the same heart. Amma brewed tea just as she had in the tent. Kofi lay close, greeting each visitor with gentle eyes. But beyond the salon, a greater tide swelled. The comb beneath glass became an icon. Tourists came not for fashion, but for reverence. "This is where she rose," they whispered. "This is where dignity lives." Social pages buzzed, articles spread. In a world obsessed with surface, she reminds us of soul. From a broken comb, a movement was born. Yet within the salon's warm embrace, Serwaa remained unchanged. "We are not saved by glass and gold," she reminded her daughter. "We are saved by love carried forward." And each time her fingers closed around the comb, each time the teeth slid through weary hair, she whispered the same vow. "We do not forget, we do not leave anyone behind." And so beneath banners of the world's gaze, beneath lights now softened by memory and meaning, the broken comb gleamed on. And beauty reborn stood not as a monument to one woman, but to all who rose, who fought, who loved through the breaking. And beside it, always Kofi the lion, resting watchful upon his scarred side. The weeks after Beauty Reborn's opening unfolded like petals in the sun. Serwaa's rhythm remained unchanged, a blade of constancy amid the swirling currents of new fame. Each Sunday, the Sunday chair remained hers. Each stroke of her hand across worn hair reaffirmed her vow. "We do not leave anyone behind." Amma grew confident in her small role, offering tea, greeting visitors with soft smiles. And Kofi, faithful guardian of both comb and child, had become a legend in his own right. The lion of the salon, they called him. The heart beneath the glass. But beneath this tide of reverence, another current stirred, one older, deeper. It came not in fanfare or headlines, but in the quiet footsteps of a single visitor. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The salon thrummed softly, clients chatting, scissors singing their metallic song. Serwaa, in the midst of preparing her next station, heard the soft chime of the front door. "Welcome," she called without turning. But the voice that answered froze her hand mid-motion. "I was a friend of your mother." Serwaa straightened slowly, breath caught in her throat. She turned. Before her stood an elderly woman draped in a simple faded kente eyes, dark with memory. "I knew Akua," the woman said softly. "I have searched for you for many years. The world seemed to fall away. You saw son. You knew my mother, Bam Adsa," Serwaa managed. She is gone, but..." The woman nodded, eyes shimmering. "Yes, but her spirit lives, and I see it in you." She stepped forward, reaching into a small woven bag. From it, she drew a thin, worn photograph, edges curled with time. She held it out. Serwaa's breath caught. There beneath a bright awning stood her mother, Akua, young, radiant, comb in hand, braiding the hair of a smiling child. Beside her stood the very woman who now faced her, younger then, but unmistakable. "She was the finest hairdresser in the old market," the woman said. "She taught many of us not just to braid, but to carry love through our hands." Tears blurred Serwaa's vision. "She never spoke of her work to me," she whispered. "Only that beauty was not a thing to sell, but a thing to give." "And she gave it," the woman said, "even in her hardest days, even as sickness claimed her." Flashback. The memory bloomed vivid and sharp. A small room, walls faded, but warm with life. A young Serwaa, no more than 6, sat upon a low stool. Before her knelt Akua, hands gentle comb gliding through her daughter's thick hair. "You must remember, child," her mother's voice echoed. "Hair holds more than style. It holds story, spirit, pride." Serwaa giggled. "It tickles, Mama." Akua laughed, voice rich with love. "Then you will learn to make it dance." Her fingers wove deftly, braiding strands with rhythm and reverence. "This is our art, Serwaa, our gift. Never let the world take it from you." End flashback. Back in the present, Serwaa blinked away tears. "She taught you all this," the woman said. "And now you teach the world, even if you do not know it." Serwaa's voice trembled. "I thought I began alone, but she was always with me." The woman smiled. She would be proud, more than words can say. They sat together for hours, weaving memories from tattered threads. The woman's name was Mansa, a master braider in her youth, now retired but still fierce of spirit. She spoke of Akua's legacy, a sisterhood of women trained not merely to style, but to serve to uplift, to remind others of their worth. We were many, she said softly, but time and hardship scattered us. Few remain. She reached across the table, taking Serwaa's hands in her own. You are the new root. From you new branches must grow. That night, long after the salon had emptied, Serwaa sat alone before the comb beneath glass. Amma slept, curled upon a chair, Kofi beside her. The weight of Mansa's words pressed upon her not as burden, but as calling. She taught many, Serwaa whispered. And now, so must I. The decision took shape before dawn. By sunrise, she had summoned Yaw, voice firm. Help me spread word. Not for clients, for students. Yaw blinked. Students? Yes, Serwaa said. I will teach the girls from the streets, those who have known hunger, loss, despair. As my mother taught, so will I. A pause. They will learn more than to style hair. They will learn to hold dignity in their hands. Yaw smiled, eyes bright. You honor her legacy, and you build your own. The word spread swiftly. By the next Sunday, beyond those who came for the Sunday chair, others arrived, young girls, thin, with hardship eyes, wary, but hopeful. We heard. You teach, one whispered. Is it true? Serwaa knelt to meet their gaze. Yes. Here we teach not for profit, but for pride. She rose. Come, let us begin. In a corner of the salon, beneath the watching gaze of the comb, Serwaa gathered them. She spoke first, not of scissors or style, but of history, of her mother, of Mansa, of the power carried through humble hands. You will learn to braid, to weave, to cut, she said. But above all, you will learn to serve with love, to give dignity where the world has taken it. Weeks unfolded. The girls learned swiftly, fingers nimble, hearts hungry for purpose. Serwaa guided them with patience, with grace. She taught them not just technique, but posture, presence, the quiet art of making another feel seen, valued. Amma assisted proudly, her small voice echoing her mother's wisdom. Kofi watched each session, ever the silent guardian. One afternoon, as Serwaa guided a young girl's hands through a complex braid, Mansa returned. She watched in silence, tears shimmering. Akua would weep with pride, she whispered. Through you, her art breathes anew. Serwaa smiled, gaze soft. Not just her art, Shimpa, she said. Her love, her spirit, her fight. Thus, beneath the banner of beauty reborn, a new legacy took root. A sisterhood reborn not of wealth or fame, but of hands that healed, of hearts that rose. And beneath the glass, the broken comb gleamed on a beacon across generations. By late summer, Beauty Reborn had become more than a salon. It had become a sanctuary, a beacon. Stories of Serwaa's journey now traveled far beyond Ghana's borders. Articles appeared in European and American publications. Bloggers and influencers flocked to Accra, eager to photograph the comb beneath glass and sit, if only once, in the fabled Sunday chair. And with the tide of attention came the tide of ambition. Essie Dankwa returned one bright morning, her eyes gleaming with corporate hunger. Madame Serwaa, she began, after the customary pleasantries. It is time we spoke of expansion. Serwaa frowned, setting aside her comb. Expansion, yes? Essie's smile widened. The world adores your story. They long to be part of it. Adinkra Beauty proposes a franchise, a chain of Beauty Reborn salons across Ghana and beyond. She unfolded a sleek portfolio, pages glossy with mock-ups, Serwaa's face gracing billboards, the comb silhouette as a corporate logo, luxury packaging stamped with her signature. You will be the face of a movement, Essie said softly. You will be wealthy beyond imagining. For a long moment, Serwaa said nothing. Around her, the salon hummed with its usual life. Amma's laughter, the gentle snip of scissors, Kofi's steady breath beneath her chair. And what of the ones who come here as they are? Serwaa asked finally, voice low. The women with worn shoes, the girls with no family, the ones who sit in my Sunday chair. Essie's smile faltered. Of course the salon will remain, one flagship here. But the brand must grow. It must evolve. Serwaa's eyes darkened. Evolve into what? An empire of glass and chrome, an empire of hope, Essie replied smoothly. Your story multiplied. Your image a symbol across continents. She leaned closer. You owe it to yourself and to your daughter. That night the offer weighed upon Serwaa like stone. Long after the last customer had gone after Amma and Kofi had drifted to sleep in their corner nest, she remained awake, heart a battlefield of voices. The portfolio lay open upon her work table, a siren's call. Wealth, it whispered. Security. A future for Amma, a legacy that will outlive you. But beneath its gleaming surface, another voice murmured, older, deeper. And at what cost will you trade service for spectacle? Will you become an emblem carved from hollow gold? Unable to rest, Serwaa rose. She crossed to the pedestal, where the comb rested beneath glass. Old friend, she whispered, fingers pressed to the case. We began with nothing. Each stroke of your teeth reclaimed dignity from the mud. Now they ask us to become an empire, to be sold in shops beneath bright lights. Her gaze dropped. Will I lose what matters most? Will I forget why we began? Soft footsteps stirred behind her. Mama! Amma stood in the doorway, eyes heavy with sleep. Serwaa opened her arms. Her daughter crept into them, head resting against her heart. They want to make many salons, Serwaa said softly. With my name. With the comb. That sounds good, Amma murmured. Then more people can know your work. But if I say yes, Serwaa whispered, I may not cut hair here as I do now. They may change what this place means. Amma frowned. But the love lives in your hands, Mama. Not in the name, not in glass. She looked up, gaze clear. If you stop giving love, no salon will matter. If you keep giving love, no one can take it. Kofi stirred, lifting his head. Eyes met Serwaa's, deep, unwavering, loyal. You too, she whispered with a soft smile. You say we must stay true. Kofi thumped his tail once, slow and sure. For a long time, Serwaa sat with them both, heart slowly settling. Thank you, she murmured at last, voice steady. She rose, kissed Amma's brow, stroked Kofi's fur. Then we choose service. We choose truth. She crossed to her desk, folded the portfolio closed. Essie will understand or she will not, but this path is ours. She reached for the comb's case fingers, lingering. And you, she whispered, you stay here not as brand, but as beacon. The moon hung high above beauty reborn, silver light, spilling across the empty salon. Within its heart, beneath the comb's steady gaze, a mother, a daughter, and a dog sat wrapped in quiet resolve. We began with love, Serwaa said softly, and so we shall remain. Morning light spilled through the high windows of beauty reborn, painting the salon in hues of gold and warmth. It was Sunday, no ordinary Sunday, but now a day known throughout the quarter across Accra and on the streams watched around the world. Hair and Love Day. Born from Serwaa's vow to serve it, had become a ritual that healed not only hair, but hearts. A day where hands shaped hope, where scissors whispered forgiveness, where combs untangled not only strands, but sorrows, and where those forgotten by the city, children, elders, animals, found sanctuary beneath a single roof. Inside, the air hummed with gentle life. The Sunday chair remained at its sacred post. But on this day, every chair was open, every pair of hands ready to serve. Serwaa stood at the center, her simple blue dress now as iconic as any crown. At her feet, Kofi lay with regal, calm red collar, gleaming eyes, watchful. The scar along his ribs had faded, but not the memory it carried. And gathered before them, a sea of faces. Children with bare feet and bright eyes. Elders with lined brows and tired limbs. Mothers clutching infants. Fathers who had not known such care in years. And scattered among them, the animals. Stray dogs with cautious tails. Cats curled in laps. Even an injured parrot brought by a young boy. All drawn by a single truth. Here you are seen, here you are loved. The day began with a song. Amma, her voice clear and warm, sang softly as tea was poured into chipped cups. Volunteers moved through the crowd, smiles as generous as their hands. Dr. Ifua, now a fixture of the salon, led a small team tending to the animals, bandaging paws, soothing frightened creatures. At the center, Serwaa lifted her comb, gaze steady. We begin, she said, with love, with dignity, with all that we are. Cameras rolled, but on this day no lens felt invasive. Here the story belonged to those who lived it. Scene slow motion. Children gathered around Kofi, their laughter like bells. They stroked his fur, pressed cheeks to his flank. He accepted each touch with patient grace, tail sweeping the floor in soft arcs. A young girl, no older than 5, leaned close. You are brave, she whispered. Like Mama says. Kofi blinked, leaned in, licked her cheek. She giggled a sound too rare, too precious. Across the salon, Serwaa's fingers moved with reverence. An elderly woman sat before her eyes closed. My mother used to braid my hair, the woman whispered. Before the war, before the hunger. Then let us remember her together. Serwaa replied softly. Her hands wove not just strands, but memory, each twist a bridge to the past, each knot a promise of tomorrow. Tears traced the elder's cheeks as the final braid was tied. You have given me back a piece I thought lost, she murmured. Serwaa kissed her brow. We give to each other. That is why we are here. Scene. The donation jar marked Hair and Love for All Beings filled slowly but surely. Coins, bills, notes folded with care. Every CD raised would fund food, medicine, safe shelter for the animals of the streets. We heal together, the sign beneath it read. No soul left behind. Outside the line stretched far, but no one was turned away. Come, Serwaa called again and again. Come, you are welcome here. Scene. A boy of 12, his head shaved patchwork from neglect, took the chair. Amma stood beside her mother, eyes shining with pride. May I try, Mama? Serwaa smiled. Of course, my brave one. Together, mother and daughter worked hands, guiding, teaching, transforming. The boy watched his reflection, disbelief dawning. Is that me? He whispered. Yes, Amma beamed. It is who you have always been. As the sun rose higher, music swelled, soft drums, lilting voices. The salon pulsed with life. Laughter and tears mingled freely. Old enemies embraced, new friends were born. And above it all, the comb beneath glass gleamed witness to the rebirth unfolding below. Scene. Serwaa knelt before a small kitten fur, matted eyes clouded. She was found by the river, a boy explained. Then she will know love now, Serwaa said. She lifted the fragile creature, cradling it close. Kofi watched tail thumping softly as if to say, welcome, little one. You are safe here. The hours passed, but the spirit never dimmed. By day's end, every chair had served many. Every creature had been tended. Every heart had been touched. Scene slow motion montage. Children hugging Kofi, spinning in joy. Elders weeping softly as their hair was braided with reverence. Animals curling into warm laps, sighing into peace. Hands clasped across generations, across divides once thought unbridgeable. A single truth shimmering through every frame. Here beauty is not sold, it is shared, and it is enough. As twilight fell, Serwaa stood before the crowd. You came, she said, voice thick with gratitude. You trusted us with your stories, your wounds, your hope. We are honored. She gestured to the comb. This began with nothing but a mother's hands. Today those hands are many, and together we will continue. A roar of love answered her, not of noise, but of knowing. And beneath it all, Kofi lay content, a small kitten curled between his paws, new guardians of an ever-growing circle of healing. In the heart of Accra, beneath the rising stars, Hair and Love Day had woven a new tapestry of people, of animals, of community. And through it all, beauty reborn pulsed with a simple truth. We heal together, always. The hour was late, yet beauty reborn still pulsed with quiet life. Through the tall windows, the final embers of sunset bled crimson across the sky, surrendering to the deep indigo of night. Inside, soft lamplight pooled across the polished floors. Serwaa stood alone at the heart of the salon. The chairs had been swept clean, the teacups washed and stored, the laughter and tears of the day lingering in the air like the scent of warm shea butter. Her eyes were drawn, as always, to the pedestal at the far wall. The comb, beneath glass, beneath gold, beneath time itself, still whole, still broken, still hers. She stepped forward, each footfall echoing softly. For a long moment she simply looked through the gleam, through the reflections of all that had been. Her mother's hands, her own trembling fingers beneath the rain, the children's laughter, Kofi's steadfast gaze. 1,000 memories refracted in the fractured teeth of that humble tool. Her voice rose, not loud but certain. This comb once cut through pain. Now it combs a path for hope. This comb once cut pain, now combs the path for hope. She exhaled a breath deep with release. Behind her, gentle footsteps approached. Amma, bright-eyed arms laden with folded cloths. Mama, more guests are coming tomorrow, she beamed. I told them they are welcome. Serwaa smiled softly. As always, my child, as always. At her feet, Kofi stirred, stretching with a contented sigh before settling once more on his woven mat, guardian lion heart. The camera begins to pull back. Slowly, softly, the frame widens, revealing a salon alive with warmth. A new day ready to begin. Clients laughing in corners, hands weaving love into each braid. A child hugging Kofi beneath the chairs. Amma at her mother's side, a new generation rising. The camera continues its retreat. Through the glass doors, into the bustling street, into the living city, and upward toward stars blooming against the velvet night. A single line appears white against the darkness. Within every shard of a broken life, light can be found if we choose to see it. In every broken piece of life, light can still be seen if we choose to look.